If you mention the name Laudrup to a random football fan, they'll probably say something like, Michael Laudrup, some player him, and that is not an inaccurate statement. In a glittering career, Michael won the European Cup and 4 La Liga titles in a row as an integral part of Johan Cruyff's Barcelona dream team. He also won titles with Juventus, Real Madrid and Ajax, and is widely regarded as one of the best attacking midfielders of all time. He has also maintained some relevance with the newer, younger generation of football fans after being immortalised as an icon in FIFA's Ultimate Team. However, Michael had a younger, oft overlooked sibling. Younger brother Brian was arguably just as good a player and had his fair share of success, and while a large dollop of bad luck prevented him from gaining the kind of global recognition and acclaim that his big brother did, he is still hailed as a god in Glasgow. There was immense pressure on Brian from the very beginning. His father, Finn, had been a famous footballer in Denmark, having spent the majority of his career with Danish clubs. He made 19 appearances for the national team, scoring 6 goals. In 1964, Michael was born. 5 years later, on 22nd of February 1969, Brian was born in Vienna, where Finn was playing for Vienna Sport Club. Naturally, Brian's father was hugely influential in his footballing development.
For any boy, any teenager, I think your dad is something special. My father being the first professional footballer of our family, obviously he was a huge influence. He was a fantastic player at his day, and I watched him every week, watching training sessions, and he was a big part of my youth and my young career.
When Brian was 4, the Laudrups moved to Brøndby, where Finn became player coach of the team. After spending 2 years there, Finn went to Copenhagen to play for Danish First Division side Bold Club. Michael, who at this time was 12 and one of the most exciting prospects in the country, followed his father to the capital, while young Brian remained at Brøndby. Michael made his senior debut for KB at the age of 17 in 1981. The same year his father returned to Brøndby to help them get promoted to the top flight for the first time in their history. For the 82 season, Michael returned and had himself a stormer, ending up the league's 3rd top scorer with 15 as Brøndby exceeded all expectations and finished 4th. All this time, Brian had been working his way through the youth setup, and the media were speculating whether the youngest Laudrup would surpass his father and rapidly blooming brother, or would he fail, and he nearly buckled under the weight of expectation, briefly quitting the game as a team.
In Denmark, we have developed some magnificent players over the years, but you have never seen a family like ours. At times, I have to say it was very difficult because when I was 7, 8, I couldn't hide anywhere. You know, people would say, oh, there's, Finn's son or Michael's brother. He's going to be the best of them all. Can you imagine that at the age of 7, 8, 9? For me, growing up, have to live up to these expectations was very tough at times. And I have to admit that at times I was, flirting with the thought that just giving up football and then do something else.
I came home one day, they put 2 or 3 players to man-mark me in a game. I was only 14 or 15. And I came home crying, told my dad, no, that's it, that's me. I can't handle it anymore. I have to live up to this name. So I think I'll just leave it. And a week later, I couldn't leave the ball. I mean, I was thrilled to go out there on the pitch again. And I think that was the stage of my, young life where I decided that let's try and go all the way.
Michael's stellar season at Brøndby had earned him a dream move to the Serie A with Lazio. After 3 seasons in Rome, he moved to Turin with Juventus in 1985 and won the Scudetto in his debut season with the Old Lady. In 1986, Brian was 17 and ready to be tentatively introduced to the first team, managing 2 appearances as Brøndby finished 2nd in the league. The 1987 season was to be Brian's breakout. Danish football up until that point had been played totally by amateurs and part-timers, even in the first division. Around that time, Brøndby had become the first fully professional team in the country.
We were amateurs. If you wanted to play professionally, you had to go abroad, obviously. From one day to another, we were like a team that used to train perhaps 3, perhaps 4 times a week. And all of a sudden, we were full-time professionals, training twice a day and living, the professional football life. And that changed, I think, the mentality in Denmark.
And they were brimming with homegrown talent. The likes of Peter Schmeichel, Fax Jensen, Kim Vilfort, Lars Olsen and Klaus Nielsen helped the boys from Vestignen to win the league. And Brian, with his 11 goals and 24 appearances, had a big hand in that success. That season, they made it to the quarters of the European Cup and ran Porto very close, losing 2-1 on aggregate, with Brian firing wide a great opportunity to set up a nervy finish.
I think it was an eye-opener after the game, you realize how lucky you've been, to play at that level, running very close to a huge upset, and then realize I want more of this.
Brian would stay a further 2 years at Brøndby, winning another First Division title. During that time, he made his debut for Denmark and was named in the preliminary squad for Euro 88, but missed out due to breaking his collarbone just before the tournament. Working his way back into the team in 1989, he scored in 3 consecutive games in the World Cup qualifiers against Bulgaria, Greece and Romania respectively. The goal against Romania was jaw-dropping as he left 3 defenders for dust with a sublime piece of skill before angling a shot low into the corner. In the summer of 89, after eye-catching displays for club and country, a 20-year-old Brian was attracting attention from Europe's top leagues. Michael had emerged as one of the best footballers in the Serie A, but being a creative player had been struggling with the defensiveness and tactical rigidity of the league, and sealed a massive move to Johan Cruyff's Barcelona. Scouts at big Italian clubs believed that Brian had the potential to be even better than his brother, and several big teams were desperate to get him to follow the exact same path. Finn, who acted as Brian's agent and advisor at that time, had different ideas and thought it would be best for him to continue his development at the smaller club, where there would be less pressure to perform instantly. God knows he'd had enough of that in his short time in the game already. A Danish connection helped to decide Brian's next step. Midfielder Jan Bartram had spent a single season at Brøndby with Brian before moving to the Bundesliga with Bayer Uerdingen the year prior. Bartram helped to sell Brian to Uerdingen and Uerdingen to the Laudrups, and he signed a 3-year contract for a club record outlay of 2.2 million German marks. Any doubts about how Brian would handle the substantial jump in quality to a significantly more challenging league were very quickly assuaged. An elegant, sophisticated and refined dribbler, the youngest Laudrup looked as if he was born to have the ball at his feet. Agile with excellent balance, he could use his surprising turn of pace to explode past players and drive to the byline and pick a pass. A very unselfish player, Brian created loads of chances for his teammates. He was also ultra reliable and started every single game that season. Playing as a centre forward, the only thing you could say about him was that he should have scored more goals. In his first year at Uerdingen, he scored 6 and assisted 5. The bright light of Laudrup had not been enough to stop the team being dragged into a relegation battle in the second half of the season, and they narrowly avoided demotion by a single point. Brian had received nationwide acclaim. Kicker magazine recognised him as the second best international forward in the league. Bild newspaper hailed him as the signing of the season, and back home he was named the Danish Player of the Year. When it became clear that the boardroom at Uerdingen had neither the will nor the resources to strengthen the squad and that they were a club in decline, Laudrup sought a move away. Giants of the game and league winners Bayern Munich paid 6 million marks to bring him in, a record fee for an interleague transfer. Bayern Munich were a club brimming with optimism going into the 1991 season. After securing their 5th Bundesliga crown in 6 years, manager Jupp Heynckes exclaimed at the championship party that the team was going to win the European Cup next season. Commercial manager Uwe Holness boldly claimed that the team they had that year, including the likes of 1990 World Cup winners Jürgen Kohler, Stefan Reuter and Klaus Augenthaler, as well as the new additions of Laudrup and a 22-year-old Stefan Effenberg, were better than the famous League and European Cup double-winning side of 73-74, which boasted Franz Beckenbauer in their ranks. For Brian's part, he felt the pressure and expectations straight away. You could just feel that it is one of the biggest teams in Europe, and there's only one thing that counts. You can feel it from the start. It's trophies. The confidence increased after they thumped Kaiserslautern 4-1 in the Super Cup. Laudrup had put in a wonderful performance which had whipped the press up into a frenzy. The front page of Kicker bore the headline, "Lucky Hand of Heynckes. The Dane Laudrup becomes a superstar," and inside exclaimed, "Laudrup rounds his opponents while he swings his body casually, dancing, yet all together at breakneck speed. For him, football is not hard work, but rather easy, fine art, artistry, show." Heynckes, however, was not as impressed. "I make higher demands. He still has a lot to learn. Only to delight the audience, that is not enough in itself." 5 days after the Super Cup victory, Bayern met 3rd Division FV Weinheim in the first round of the German Cup. The underdogs pulled off a huge shock, won 1-0 and dumped the favourites out. Laudrup had gone from looking outstanding to ordinary in less than a week. His struggles continued in the league, and he wasn't at his best in the opening 3 league games, as he wasn't at full fitness, and was also finding it difficult to form a relationship with either Alan McInally or Radmilo Mihailovic up front. Things started to click a bit better when the man that Laudrup would go on to claim to be his preferred choice of strike partner, Roland Wolfhard, made his first start of the season. Away to Karlsruhe, Laudrup got his first Bayern goal after 9 minutes, assisted by Wolfhard. Brian repaid the favour 10 minutes later as Bayern picked up a 3-2 win. Laudrup assisted in the next match against Kaiserslautern and started to find his groove as Sport Bild proclaimed him as the Bundesliga's most elegant dribbler. Despite showing flashes of brilliance and his undoubted potential being there for all to see, he was inconsistent and a little frustrating in the first quarter of the season. The main issue was the same it had been at Uerdingen. He wasted too many chances and had only a solitary goal in his first 10 league matches. At first, Heinkes was openly critical of his new signing, slamming him after a disappointing performance in the 1-0 loss to Werder Bremen. If he does not play more for the team, he will lose his free pass. Then he has to go where it hurts, on the bench. Not long after that though, Heinkes realised that Brian Laudrup responded best to a different kind of management, and that receiving praise and being trusted was what motivated him the most. So the gaffer decided to start downplaying the huge expectations that came with being the most expensive player in the league.
Bild Zeitung, the German newspaper, they every time I didn't play well, oh, he's a 6 million German mark flop. And when I played well, I mean, that what you can expect for that kind of money. So it was yes, I couldn't win, but
a 6-1 thrashing of Hamburg on matchday 11, in which Laudrup scored one and also assisted Thomas Strunz, kick-started a period of great individual form that saw Brian score 5 and assist 5 in the next 10 games. Praise was being heaped upon him from all corners during this time. Kicker hailed him as the Bundesliga's new world star. The Hamburger Abendblatt newspaper named him as the transfer of the season. His Bundesliga opponents were also deeply impressed by him. The entire Bundesliga has learned from Brian Laudrup. His ball handling is fantastic. After all, he caresses it more than he kicks it, says defender Rainer Zeitsch. Amidst all the plaudits, Brøndby coach Morten Olsen wanted to stress that the young Dane still had some work to do. Brian can do things that others cannot, but Brian has to prove in big games that he has character. He still lacks that. At Bayern, he is in the right school. From the end of March though, it all started to go off the rails as they won just once in 5 league matches, including deeply damaging back-to-back defeats against Kaiserslautern and Dusseldorf respectively. Laudrup, who was often singled out for special attention by disgruntled defenders and not protected properly by the refs, struggled with injury complaints and scored only once during this time. Once again, it was Hamburg who helped them get things back on track, with a 3-2 win kick-starting a run of 4 straight victories before a shock loss to Wothenschild, who Bayern had thumped 7-0 earlier in the season, all but ended their hopes. A draw on the last day against Brian's former club Uerdingen, who had already been relegated, was the final nail in the coffin, and they ended the season in second, 3 points behind Kaiserslautern. It was to be a trophyless campaign for Die Roten, as they made it to the Champions League semi-final only to fall to eventual winners Red Star Belgrade.
Evo sada prilike za Pančeva 1-1. Darko Pančev, Saničević, Dejan Saničević u 100% šansi i to je 2-1 za Crvenu zvezdu.
Lično jakim udarcem Sinišu Mihajlovića. Mihajlović šutirao je i gol! Šutirao je Augenthaler Effenberg. I šta će sada biti? 2-1 za Bayern München. Mihajlović u sredinu. Šta je sada?
Brian Laudrup had failed to score a single goal on European football's biggest stage of that season. It was truly unthinkable that a campaign that had begun with such optimism ended with empty hands. There we were, so close to achieving so much, and yet you stand there with nothing. Then, in a club like Bayern, it is almost a disaster, and you could feel it, said Laudrup. Despite a marked dip in form in the last few games, Brian had overall a season to be proud of on an individual level and finished with 9 goals and 11 assists. He was named in Bild's team of the season.
I must admit, the first season I actually played well. Maybe I didn't score as many goals as they would have liked. I scored 9 goals. That's not enough in Bayern Munich, but I was seen as a different player because I could set up goals and make things happen.
As his first season had worn on, Brian had started to get frustrated with how he was utilised in the team and was unhappy at being used as a striker, where he often felt isolated and unable to influence proceedings. Before the start of the 91-92 season, the acquisitions of two forwards, Bruno Labbadia and Mozardeem, allowed for a rethink. Before that season, Jupp Heynckes, Uli Hoeneß and we sat down. They actually think that, with the qualities I had, I should, instead of Olaf Thon, be in this number 10 role, just behind the two strikers. However, an injury to Mozardeem meant Brian started the first league match against Bremen as a centre forward and scored. After that though, he was moved deeper, behind the striker, and it was playing in this position that Brian Laudrup suffered the worst injury of his life against Dynamo Dresden. I tried to dribble through two men, and then I get stuck in the grass, and then it's like it gives such a twist in the knee. That is often the way it happens. I can just feel right away. There is something or other that is not as it should be. Remarkably, Brian actually played the whole match and was one of the best players on the field. The injury was not spotted until the next day, when his knee had swollen to twice its normal size and he was unable to move it. A series of x-rays discovered that the anterior cruciate ligament in his right knee was 90% torn. It had the potential to end his whole career before it had properly begun. Bayern, however, had the resources to send him to Richard Stedman, one of the foremost knee specialists in the world, who operated on him and advised his rehab. Nevertheless, he was sidelined for 5 months, and when he came back in February was decidedly rusty.
And when I came back, I never really got into the way I would have loved to play. It was difficult, but a learning process, which maybe was the first time that I really experienced maybe difficulties in my career.
In what was one of the worst seasons in Bayern's history, chaos behind the scenes and in the boardroom with all sorts of personnel changes meant they finished 10th in the league. The summer of 1992 saw one of the biggest fairy tale stories in football history played out as unlikely Denmark enjoyed their greatest ever sporting success. Michael and Brian Laudrup had actually both quit the Richard Møller Nielsen coached Danish national team in 1990.
I made the decision to leave the national team at some point. My brother did as well, for two different reasons. I think for my brother, he was very much involved with Barcelona back then, played a completely different style of football at his club, so he didn't feel that he was capable of being successful. And I just felt that I was not at the right place at the right time. So I quit the national team.
However, in April 92, Brian had been persuaded to return to the fold. On May 28, 1992, Brian, still recovering from his knee issues, had been asked to participate in extra training at Bayern Munich before going on holiday. It was less than 2 weeks before the European Championship, which Denmark had failed to qualify for, finishing a point behind Group 4 winners Yugoslavia. However, due to the wars that were engulfing the Balkans, Yugoslavia were kicked out of the competition and Denmark were invited to take their place. Such short notice was obviously less than optimal preparation for a major tournament, which had them drawn in Group 1 against Sweden, France and England.
We had players who hadn't played for a while, being on the beach and the barbecue and all that. Good joke among the players was that we were ready for 90 minutes. 30 against England, 30 against Sweden, 30 against France.
Nielsen, however, sought to inspire his lads and give them belief that they could do more than just make up the numbers.
He held a speech and he said, guys, this is a great opportunity. For some of you, it's the only time you'll ever play a European Championship. And listen, we are going across the channel to actually win it. I think what he did was to show us that we were not just going to the European Championship to be dog food.
He would also set them up to be very well organised defensively and hard to break down. Brian was the man that made them tick going forward, and along with Peter Schmeichel, was a key figure in helping his team to defy expectations. They kicked off their competition against the Three Lions and managed a respectable 0-0 draw. Their second group stage match saw them face off against the host Sweden. They went into the final group match against France, needing a victory, and for Sweden to get a result against England if they wanted to progress.
Have reached the semi-final of Europa 92, Sweden through as well.
Both of those things happened, and two of the favourites, France and England, were sent home. Progressing out of the group had been unlikely enough, but pretty much the whole of Europe predicted that the fairy tale run would end at the semi-finals, as they met a Netherlands side packed with world-class stars.
Where we're talking about Holland as winners of that 92 European Championship, they'd certainly had the team for it, but they underestimated us.
Brian Laudrup has sprung the Dutch offside trap straight away. Vilvoorde is herring into the middle. Mistake by De Boer. Laudrup's cross. Oh! Denmark have scored. Larsen. And the holders are behind. The favourites are behind. Brian Laudrup has Holland aching with anxiety. Fischke. Bergkamp. Oh, and it's gone through the goalkeeper. Dennis Bergkamp has equalised. Vilvoorde, Laudrup. Yes! He's hit the target again. Henrik Larsson. Olsen's cross. Olsen. He'll try it from there himself. And here's Hullet. Beaten out by Schmeichel. Keep in the European Championship. Well, they can. Frank Rijkaard. And Hullet was trying to be too clever. Christensen. Lone at the back post. It's Roy, beaten out by Schmeichel and lost on penalties. Oh, Schmeichel! Who can place them but blast them as well. They match Koeman here. Oh, and in the tournament. Oh, and he hasn't scored now! Schmeichel has saved it. Vilvoorde. And he hasn't done it again. It's a short approach to the ball, and he's done it! Oh, what a way to win it! And Holland, the holders, have been dumped out of the European Championship. It hardly seems possible.
Brian and the boys had just one more hurdle to overcome, one which would see Laudrup go up against several of his teammates.
Det muligheden for Stefan Laudrup, og den godt kommet ud af Peter Schmeichel. Henrik Larsen med ind på midten, og der kommer John Jensen. Jyttelehud! Nej. Klinsmann. Og afslutning på Klinsmann. Godt taget, Peter. Fantastisk redning af Peter Schmeichel. Utrolig reageret. John Jensen, er der en lille åbning i højre? Han prøver igen faktisk. Ja. Sam Effenberg. 40 minutter endnu, og det kan blive 45 lange minutter, Preben. Stadigvæk Laudrup. Og derover kommer Kim Vilvoorde. Hvad så Vilvoorde? Nej. Han skal sparke med det samme. Og med det nej. Vilvoorde endnu. Og der Kim Vilvoorde. Ja! Hud! Nej. Forsvar. Riedle, og der kommer kanon. Og det ser ud som om det er slut. Det er slut. De har gjort det igen.
We Denmark, who weren't even meant to be at the tournament, have beaten the World Cup holders to win the most unlikeliest of European championships. It was a victory built at Brøndby. 7 of the 11 who started the final had played for that club. It was a victory that had been carried on the backs of Schmeichel's saves and Brian's brilliant dribbling. It was also a victory achieved without the best player the country has ever produced, Michael Laudrup. For the first time in his footballing career, Brian had stepped out of the long and legendary shadow of his brother. He had played magnificently throughout the Euros and was named in the team of the tournament. He would also be voted 6th in the Ballon d'Or at the end of that year. However, all was not rosy for Brian on the club front, and during the Euros, the wheels had been set in motion behind the scenes on a move away from Bayern Munich. There were numerous factors at play, but the main reason was new coach Erik Ribbeck, who had taken over at the tail end of the 91-92 campaign. Ribbeck and Laudrup had diametrically opposed views on how the game should be played. Ribbeck's footballing philosophy was based around fight, effort, work and physicality, and he wanted Laudrup to defend more than the Dane was comfortable doing. Brian was one of the most technically gifted players in the world at the time, and wished to play the type of football that would showcase his skill and talent. He no longer thought he would be able to do that in the Bundesliga, especially not under Ribbeck. It was time for him to fulfill a long-held dream and play in Italy like his brother had, and he moved to Fiorentina in July 1992 for 10 million Deutschmarks. Ribbeck claimed in the press to be the instigator of the transfer and sent Brian away with a stinging rebuke. Another positive of moving to Florence was that Brian would be linking up with Stefan Effenberg, who had made the move from Germany to Italy a few weeks before. Despite being more or less polar opposites personality-wise, Laudrup and Effenberg had quickly become extremely close friends at Bayern, gravitating towards each other due to the fact they had joined the club at the same time and were a similar age. They were soon inseparable off the pitch. Their tight relationship continued in Italy, despite a blip at the start of the season due to Effenberg pinching Brian's brand new but uninsured Mercedes SL 500 Cabriolet.
Effenberg has something of a reputation for being a bit of a troublemaker back home in Germany. Fiorentina prepared to take the risk, linking him with Ryan Laudrup. Though they fell out for a while after a row over a car. Apparently Stefan Effenberg drove off with Laudrup's new car, which Laudrup wasn't too pleased about.
Laudrup lit up the Serie A straight away, playing in his preferred position behind the striker, and with plenty of license to drift out to either flank, he gave many an experienced defender a torrid time with his unbelievable close control, apparently bottomless toolbag of tricks and flicks, and his electrifying pace. Under the management of Luigi Radice, the team were playing well and having a decent season. They were 7th place in an extremely tight Serie A table, only 2 points behind 2nd place Inter Milan when Radice was sacked on 4th of January following a 1-0 loss to Atalanta. La Viola imploded, and 3 more managers could not stop them from plummeting down the table and into the relegation zone. Despite boasting some fine attacking talent like Gabriel Batistuta, Francesco Baiano, Laudrup and Effenberg, they finished the season in 16th and were demoted. Fiorentina's fans are some of the most passionate and dedicated in Italy, and when it became clear that they were destined for Serie B, things got scary for Laudrup and his teammates.
I wouldn't say I feared for anybody's lives, but at some point we were told to send our families back home.
Talk about the bus being attacked, team bus being attacked, stones thrown at it and all that.
Exactly, and I remember coming back from a game, and police were outside. So many fans surrounding the bus, trying to actually threaten us. And it was like, that was the first time for me watching scenes like that, and for me, this has not got anything to do with football. So for me, it was a shocking experience.
Similarly to his first season in the Bundesliga, Brian had actually played well for Fiorentina and got himself 5 goals and 2 assists in a struggling team. The bitterly disappointing relegation and the unsavoury experiences with the fans had left a sour taste in his mouth, however, and he was looking to end his nightmare stay in Italy. Fiorentina, though, had other ideas and sent him out on loan to league winners AC Milan, presumably with a view of recouping a large chunk of the money they'd spent on him if he was able to impress at the San Siro. At Milan, the Serie A's strict foreign players policy restrictions, as well as the management of the defensively minded Fabio Capello, saw him limited to just 9 league appearances. He was Capello's chosen man in the Champions League though, at least initially, as he started the first 5 games of their campaign, scoring 1 in the 6-0 rout of Copenhagen. He was then out of the squad, a 45-minute cameo against Anderlecht aside, as AC Milan made it to the finals against Barcelona, and it was in the stands with his brother that he watched the match, as both Laudrups were overlooked for their respective sides. A Dejan Savicevic-inspired AC Milan walloped Cruyff's Barcelona 4-0. Brian had won the Serie A and the Champions League that season, his first major club honours since leaving Denmark, but it had been a bittersweet experience.
It was a great experience. I played with, again, some of the best players in the world. So obviously playing or just training with these guys, fantastic. But for me personally, we won the Serie A and we won the European Cup. But I never really felt that I was part of that team.
All in all, the previous 5 years have been tough on Brian. His horrific knee injury, the misfortune in joining a big club like Bayern Munich at a time when they were in turmoil, relegation with Fiorentina, and playing under a variety of managers who were overly defensive or were unwilling to give him the freedom he wanted on the pitch. All the while, playing in the type of free role that Brian so longed to be given, Michael had been hoovering up honours like they were going out of fashion and establishing himself as the best attacking midfielder in Europe. Across an outstanding 5-year period, he made 226 appearances for the Blaugrana, scoring 54 and assisting 19. He won 4 La Liga titles in a row, a Copa del Rey, a European Super Cup and the European Cup. In the summer of '94, after disagreements with Johan Cruyff culminated in him being left out of the Champions League final, Michael's stellar time at Barca was over and he moved to their great rivals Real Madrid. In complete contrast, Brian's career had lacked any kind of stability or security, and he was desperate to finally leave Italy. He was searching for somewhere he would be understood, where he would be wanted, and where he could win. He was searching for a home. He had a number of offers, but the most serious and enthusiastic interest came from Rangers. An unsure Brian was encouraged by his father to go and see what it was all about, so Laudrup flew to Scotland to meet with Walter Smith.
He was ready to take the freedom to play anywhere and try and cause the opposition as many problems as he possibly could. And I said to him that if he came to Rangers then he would have that, and I think that he was looking for that responsibility at the stage of his career.
Drove in Walter's car to watch Loch Lomond. We were talking about my role and how he saw it and things like that, what his ideas were, and all of a sudden he said, Brian, I've been following you for years. I know exactly how to bring out the best in you, and you will get a free role in my team. I knew that maybe the time had come to move to Scotland.
In June 1994, 25-year-old Brian Laudrup signed for Rangers from Fiorentina for a fee of £2.3 million. Rangers have dominated Scottish football, winning 6 consecutive Premier Division titles in a row. Fiercely ambitious under owner David Murray, they not only aimed to beat Celtic's record of 9, but to win either the Champions League or the UEFA Cup. Brian Laudrup, with continental experience gained at 2 huge clubs, AC Milan and Bayern Munich, had been brought in with those lofty aims in mind. Basile Boli, who had just won the Champions League with Marseille, had also been signed that summer. As soon as they saw him in training, Laudrup's new teammates knew they had a special player on their hands. Things did not get off to a perfect start though. Brian Laudrup made his debut for Rangers in a shock 2-0 away defeat to AEK Athens in the Champions League qualifying round, leaving them with a mountain to climb if they wanted to realise their European aspirations. 3 days later, and the Ibrox faithful got to see what their new signing had to offer, as he made his home and league debut against Motherwell. In an outstanding performance, he blew the minds of the fans as he blew the opposition defenders away with a kind of high-speed dribbling that had seldom been seen in the league. He assisted both goals, helping Rangers to pinch a 2-1 win at the death.
Running by Laudrup, there could be something on here. Duncan Ferguson stays left. Here's Ferguson!
He put in another wonderful display in the next game against Partick Thistle, threatening constantly with his directness before he assisted his new mate Mark Haitley for the second with a trademark drive to the byline followed by a looping cross. Laudrup would form a fruitful and deadly partnership with Haitley throughout the season.
Finding Laudrup, Haitley peels away from these markers. Comes in from the far post. Brilliant play by Mark Haitley.
Then Laudrup and Rangers suffered the week from hell. It began when they went crashing out of Europe with a 1-0 loss to Athens at home, which saw questions being raised to Walter Smith about his summer acquisitions.
We spent £5 million, Walter, in the summer on good players, but these players seemingly are not good enough at the highest level in Europe.
I don't think you can say that. I mean, how can you say that? Well, I mean, they've just came at the place, haven't they? I mean, you've got to give everybody a chance to settle. I mean, you're saying Brian Laudrup can't play in Europe?
No, I'm saying that...
well, the European Cup Winners' medal, for fuck's sake. You can't say he's not good enough player to play in Europe.
Well, what?
Stupid, isn't it?
3 days later, they lost 2-0 to Celtic in Laudrup's Old Firm derby debut at Ibrox. A sour cherry was added to the cake of failure when they lost 2-1 to Falkirk in the third round of the League Cup, a match in which Laudrup scored his first Rangers goal. A surprising interaction with a fan after that disastrous run of results convinced Brian Laudrup that he was in the right place.
After the third defeat that week, I came out after the game outside Ibrox and I was a little bit worried about the fans' reaction, because I've been used to in Italy, if you lost games you would come out and people would be angry and have a go at you. And I remember a couple of Rangers fans came up to me and just said, Brian, it's going to be a lot better. It takes some time, but don't worry. When I heard that, I was so thrilled.
And get better, things indeed did. Laudrup went on to absolutely excel in the free role given to him by Walter Smith and delighted audiences everywhere he went with his outrageous skills.
I think the one thing that Brian's got, apart from having wonderful ball control, is he's probably one of the quickest players I've ever seen in my life, over 5 or 6 yards. I think the first season especially, defences in Scotland just didn't know what to do with him.
Highlights were 2 sublime solo goals in 2 separate fixtures against Dundee United.
He decides to go it alone. Brilliant play by Laudrup. Oh, magnificent goal! Laudrup's here as well. Still it's Laudrup. Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Laudrup. 17 minutes gone here at Tanner two defenders and sending an unstoppable shot past Callum O'Hanlon.
And an Old Firm match at Celtic Park where he rang rings around the boys.
Move forward, Hitley's in as well with a header. A few words to be said by Walter Smith. This is Laudrup. Good skills again by Laudrup. A delightful cross, a chance on Van Murray. Played shot by McCall to Laudrup. Good ball through again for Robertson. It's Hitley. And here's a break on for Laudrup. Showing tremendous pace. He's past the goalkeepers. A sensational goal by Laudrup.
His debut season at Rangers saw Brian in the most prolific form of his career as he scored 13 goals in all competitions, helping Rangers romp to their 7th league title in a row, 15 points ahead of Motherwell.
Although we won it 5 games before the end of the season, it's a great feeling, and we're looking forward to more titles next season.
He was named the SFWA's Players of the Year and the SPFA Players Player of the Year. The Rangers fans adored him and were convinced a god was walking amongst them. Everybody wanted to know,
how come you are so good?
Well,
it would later come out that Brian Laudrup had been approached by Barcelona just 5 months into his Rangers career, but he turned them down in favour of staying at the new home he had found at Ibrox. Going into the 95-96 season, the Hitley-Laudrup partnership was split up when the English striker was sold to QPR. Another big name was brought in who was to profit from Brian Laudrup's selfless wing play, Paul Gascoigne. A heel injury picked up in September saw him sidelined for 12 matches, and he was struggling with it even when he returned, and as such his goals tally in his sophomore season slumped to just 6 in all competitions. Despite receiving some criticism from the press for occasional inconsistency, he was once again a creative force though, and laid on a hatful of assists for his grateful teammates.
I've always enjoyed, go to the byline, put in a cross, a perfect pass, or onto a player who can score easily. That fills me with the joy I really need.
Although it was a much closer season as Celtic put up a valiant fight, Rangers still secured their 8th title in a row, 5 points ahead of their bitter rivals. Brian was a vital performer as Rangers won the Scottish Cup. He scored in the 2-1 semi-final victory over Celtic.
Laudrup spotted Robertson again. And he tried to steer it, and the boys must score! Jury, Laudrup has sprung clear. Brian Laudrup past Marshall, and Rangers feel they've got 1 foot in the final.
One of the more beautiful goals I've scored, and after that it was voted, a goal of the season, which made it a fantastic feeling.
And he bagged himself a brace and a hat-trick of assists in the 5-1 rout of Hearts in the final.
Jury to Laudrup. That's good running by Laudrup, a chance here for Rangers. That's the over! And McManus. Severe test for young McManus this, looking after Laudrup. And a bloomer by Rousset. Jury's pass, here's Laudrup. McManus goes back with him. Played it early this time, and Jury! Was Laudrup, down against McManus, he's still on his feet. And this is Jury, shooting the fourth. And here's Laudrup. Jury's inside, looking for his hat-trick. Measured for Jury. 5-1 to Rangers. Laudrup, the tennis man of the match. There could be a little argument with that. He scored 2. He made 3. He performed superbly.
It had been another disappointing season on the European front. In a difficult Champions League group of Dortmund, Steaua Bucharest and eventual winners Juventus, the Gers failed to win a single game and finished bottom of their group. Brian Laudrup scored 1 goal against Borussia Dortmund. Going into 96-97 with the fabled 9 in a row on the line, Brian was acutely aware of what was at stake.
I really put myself into to the minds of a lot of people who have been waiting for so many years to be able to say we equalised Celtic's 9 in a row. And I felt that during that season people would look to certain players. We had a number of key players out with injuries, so I felt a lot of responsibility.
A word of advice from Gaza helped Brian Laudrup to surpass the goal-scoring exploits of his debut season and become a real killer in front of goal.
I just said to him, I said, Brian, you're being too unselfish. What's happening is he's getting himself in great positions and then looking for the pass. I just said, you think you should go for goal more?
In that most significant of years, Laudrup rose to the huge pressure on his shoulders and shone like he never had before, scoring 16 league goals and 20 in all competitions.
Trying to get a run going here. He'll have a go. Again, he has Anderson winning in the middle with McCoist. Anderson. Laudrup again, he's onside.
In the middle, worries here, the goalkeeper's committed himself. This surely must be a goal. Well, here's Laudrup breaking, it's another defensive mistake, it's Laudrup.
What set Laudrup apart that season was the fact that he scored in all the most important matches. He bagged the only goal in the second Old Firm game of the season, a must-win fixture in terms of momentum, as Celtic were top of the table on goal difference at that stage.
There's a slip by O'Neill, and Laudrup to win. Rangers look for a goal and get one! In the 8th minute from Brian Laudrup.
Then, with only 6 games remaining and injuries piling up, came the last Old Firm of the season at Celtic Park. Celtic had knocked Rangers out of the Scottish Cup a few weeks prior, and they had the chance to pile more pressure on and cut the gap to just 2 points.
Celtic would like. William Durant coming through, and the goalkeeper's off his line. Rangers sensationally take the lead. What a mess the Celtic defence got into there. Right, Clinton was held there by Hateley. It's worked out to Rangers' advantage. Down goes Laudrup. Malky Mackay has been called over, and there's all kinds of trouble breaking out here now. And the red card is shown to Hateley. Well, this is incredible. And the Canio has been drawn onto a hook here. They better be very careful. But Anoni will certainly be yellow carded. The Canio is losing their place down there. There are ugly scenes down in the field now. The Canio's getting involved. Ferguson was involved. Those two were going at one another in the latter stages of the game. Still the Canio is going on, and he will certainly be red carded even after the whistle sounded. This is crazy. But they are going into a Celtic-style huddle, and they're celebrating the fact they have surely won the championship at Parkhead.
And of course, when destiny beckoned on the final day of the season, Laudrup was the man who sealed victory with something of a collector's item.
Miller's cross is a good one, that hits Laudrup. It's a classic from Laudrup.
I think I've scored 2 or 3 goals throughout my whole 15-year-old career with a hit, so obviously it was just meant to be, I think. And when I scored the winner against Dundee United, it was such a relief. I've never felt like that before.
Brian Laudrup had ensured that he had been immortalised in Scotland by not only helping to secure 9 in a row, but ending that season as the club's top scorer, coming in clutch on a number of key occasions and doing it all with consummate style, skill and class. He was named Danish Player of the Year for a 4th time and the SFWA Footballer of the Year for a 2nd time. It was another double for the Gers, as they had already won the League Cup, beating Hearts 4-3 in an exciting final.
Laudrup, away from Richie. McCoist. 1-0 to Rangers. Up goes Petric. Chance on there for Moore. It's played in by McCoist. Real opportunity there for Hearts. Cameron playing it in for Fulton. Great goal by Fulton. The Coca-Cola Cup final has come alive. Great play again by McCann! Robertson for Hearts! He's getting the linesman an earful in front of us as Gascoigne breaks into a shooting position. He's done it! Here's Gascoigne once more. Oh, he's done it again! It's a remarkable play by Gascoigne! Trophy held aloft to the Rangers fans.
That season, they perhaps had an excuse for their Champions League failings, as the whole club was laser focused on winning the league. They once again finished bottom of their group, with only a single victory to show for their efforts against Grasshopper. 10 in a row is an achievement that seems to be cursed in Scotland, as Laudrup and Rangers found out in 97-98. Brian missed a few league games due to injury, and was nowhere near as lethal in front of goal, preferring instead to provide chances for new goal machine Marco Negri. With 4 games to go, and having just beaten Celtic in the last Old Firm of the season, it was all in Rangers' hands. Walter Smith announced that he would leave at the end of the season, which seemed to shake the team, and they lost to Aberdeen and Kilmarnock, missing the opportunity to set a new record by just 2 points. It had been the first trophyless campaign of Brian Laudrup's time at Rangers, as they lost 2-1 to Hearts in the Scottish Cup final.
Steve Fulton. And he's made a distinctive break and it's a penalty. Would you believe it? 30 seconds gone. Fulton's weaving wrong. Of Andy Gorham, who's never been beaten in his previous Scottish Cup appearances. But he's been beaten for the first goal of the game. And Adam stole in. And it's 2-0.
Muro, come on.
Here's Gattuso. McCoist. Goal!
Goal by McCoist.
Long wait is over. And Hearts have won the Scottish Cup. It's their first silverware for 36 years.
With legendary gaffer Walter Smith departing for Everton, Brian Laudrup had too decided it was time to move on and sign for Chelsea while he still had several months remaining on his Rangers contract. Apparently, Sir Alex Ferguson had been interested in bringing Laudrup to Old Trafford, but had been a day late and $1 short, and contacted the Danish ringer 24 hours after he had put pen to paper on his Chelsea deal. There are many people who will tell you that Brian Laudrup wasted his prime in Scotland, in a league most perceived to be well below the Great Danes level. Laudrup himself will have absolutely none of that, and says his time at Rangers was the best in his career. He loved the club, he loved the country, he loved Walter Smith, he loved the unique atmosphere in the dressing room and the camaraderie he had with his teammates. He loved each of the 5 trophies he had won. He loved the fans, and they will forever love him. For me, the only blemish on an otherwise faultless 4 years at Rangers was his poor showings in Europe. He only scored once in the Champions League proper, certainly not good enough, given that one of the main expectations of Brian on arrival was that he would help the Gers to compete in Europe, although he wasn't the only signing made during that time who disappointed in that regard. While Brian had been at Ibrox, Michael had been ending his career with class and dignity, sandwiching a short spell in Japan with title wins in Spain with Real Madrid and the Netherlands with Ajax. Michael was set to draw the curtains on an exemplary career, playing alongside brother Brian at the 98 World Cup in France. Just as he had been at Euro 92, Brian Laudrup was his country's main man. He assisted 2 goals against Saudi Arabia and South Africa respectively as Denmark progressed to the knockout rounds. Brian bagged the second goal of the 4-1 defeat of Nigeria in the round of 16. In the quarterfinals they faced heavy favourites Brazil. In the second minute, Brian cut the ball back to Lars Jorgensen to send Denmark delirious. A quick-fire response from Brazil through Bebeto and Rivaldo goals meant the Danes went in at half-time trailing. 5 minutes after the restart, Brian gave his country hope, firing home an equaliser, followed by one of the most famous World Cup celebrations of all time. 9 minutes later, Rivaldo got his second to dash Danish dreams and send them home, despite putting up a hell of a fight. Brian and Michael were both named in the FIFA All-Star team. Brian Laudrup decided to go out on a high and call time on his illustrious national team career. All in all, he made 82 appearances for Denmark and scored 21 goals. Before the World Cup, Brian Laudrup had been getting cold feet about his move to Stamford Bridge and asked to be released from his contract. His request was refused, and he endured an unhappy time in London. A high-profile victim of Gianluca Vialli's player rotation policy, he managed only 7 league appearances. His only goal for Chelsea came in the Cup Winners' Cup against Copenhagen.
Kazarage off the bar! Laudrup! Brian Laudrup! And the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale!
The 2 legs of that last 16 tie had been the setting for negotiations on Brian's escape from Chelsea, and in November 1999 it was announced that he would leave Stamford Bridge and return to his homeland in January. Copenhagen, just like Chelsea, had turned out to be a poor choice of club. They were the biggest rivals of Brian's first club, Brøndby, and he had tainted his legacy there by joining them. His debut for Copenhagen came away to Brøndby, and he was roundly booed by the fans in a 3-2 loss. He would play only another 11 games for Copenhagen before ending his ill-conceived spell there, moving to Ajax for a reported £2 million in June 1999. I had offers from 15 clubs, and I have the feeling that Ajax is the right one for me. I did not enjoy playing with FC Copenhagen. I had the same problems there that I had with Chelsea. I could not show more than 70% of my real self, he said. And he certainly showed his real self in Holland, having a blinding individual season, scoring 13 and assisting 9. Unlike Michael, whose solitary season at Ajax had ended successfully with a league and cup double, Ajax were not in a good place when Brian arrived, as had been the story for many chapters of his club career, and they finished 5th. A chronic Achilles injury, which had been bothering him since the World Cup, meant he was unable to fulfill the final year of his Ajax contract, and he was forced to retire early at the age of 31. The last 6 months, it's been really bad. I've been taking all sorts of tablets and trying all sorts of treatments, but unfortunately the problem has not gone away. I've been thinking about an operation, but specialists in Holland and Denmark could not give me any guarantees that the problem would be solved, so I thought it was about time to call it a day. Now I've got more time maybe to go and watch Rangers at Ibrox. Judged purely in a vacuum, Brian Laudrup had a fine career. He was centre stage and playing a starring role for 2 iconic and legendary 90s championships, Euro 92 and the Rangers' 9 in a row. If there's only one held up against Michael Laudrup's achievements, that one might be tempted to think that Brian underachieved. And it is impossible to talk about Brian without mentioning Michael, just like one can't mention Ralf Schumacher without talking about his brother Michael. I feel that having the unbelievable pressure on his young shoulders to live up to Michael made him into the humble, modest, selfless and sensitive player he turned out to be. All he wanted was to feel wanted and trusted at a club, something he arguably only found in one place. In terms of ability, I rate him as one of the finest dribblers I've ever had the pleasure of watching. He approached the art with the grace of a ballerina and the power and pace of a Ferrari. He is someone whose talents would be much more cherished in today's footballing climate, where creating chances is valued as much as scoring them. Personally, I tend to agree with the Rangers fans who still call him God.
I think it was more difficult for him because when I started playing and I was young, 16, 17, my father was in his end of the career. But when Brian started, I was going to Italy. I played as a professional, so it was more difficult to him, you know. I was my father's son, but Brian was his brother's kid brother, you know, and that was more difficult in the beginning. But I think he managed very, very well.